In the name of God, our Creator, our Redeemer, and the Spirit who is our companion. Amen. Please be seated. As a mother, I've always been somewhat offended by Jesus's rather snippy response to his mother, who was frantic and afraid when she and Joseph finally found him. Now, the whole family, and this is assuming that some of Jesus's younger siblings had been already born, they all had traveled to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. At the age of 12, Jesus was required to be exposed to this grueling but essential ritual. Friends and families had traveled together as groups, mostly to prevent attacks by highway robbers. Now, going home all seemed fine. They were safe. But where on earth was Jesus? Not finding him anywhere in the company, Mary and Joseph were forced to go back to Jerusalem, an entire day's journey. After 3 days, they somehow knew to look for him in the temple. That's when Mary lets him have it, and I paraphrase, "Why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been sick with worry." Why were you worried? Why were you searching for me? Jesus asks, rather coolly, I think. And then in the words of another translation, "Didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business?" "I'll give you business," I probably would have said. I noticed that Luke adds that after they returned home, Jesus was said to be an obedient child. I suppose he thought he'd better keep his head down and do his homework. Luke is the only evangelist to include this episode from Jesus's childhood. It's interesting that Luke describes him as lost, at least for that time, to his family. Lostness is a major theme in Luke's gospel. He is the only gospel writer to include stories of the lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost son or prodigal son. But here Jesus isn't really lost at all. For him, he is where he needs to be, conversing with the scholars in the temple. It's where he feels at home, close to his heavenly Abba. This early focus on his special mission was natural for Jesus, but it must have left Mary and Joseph with some confusion and perhaps also a special understanding about their oldest child. Luke tells us that Mary treasured all these things in her heart. And it might have also called to her mind the prophecy of Simeon, "And a sword shall pierce your own soul too." Mary and Joseph were looking for a child they believed was lost. They came away, perhaps, with a deeper understanding of the role Jesus would go on to play, and an understanding of just what might be required of them. That's what happens when we go looking for Jesus. When we look for Jesus with an open mind and an open heart, we come away changed in ways that may not be immediately obvious, but these are changes that last. I remember a time when, as a young priest, I felt under a lot of stress. There was pressure placed on me that I now realize was inappropriate. But this was the late 1970s. long before the Me Too movement. During that time, I was sitting in a group meditation in the chancel of the church I was serving. The meditation leader asked us to picture ourselves with Jesus among his other disciples. When one by one the other disciples dispersed, I was left alone with Jesus. I was invited to ask Jesus anything I wanted to ask. But before I could even ask, I heard an answer: "You can stay with me." This is just what I needed to hear. This is just what I needed to know in a very difficult time. And it will remain with me the rest of my life. I'd found something essential that I had lost, something that would give me strength. Seeking Jesus can take another form, discovering the lost self. I've always been impressed, a little surprised, but impressed when people in white supremacy or other hate groups are able to find their way out against all odds. This is a description of how one man began his ascent out of evil. After 8 years as a neo-Nazi Christian, interestingly named, Piccolini began to question this ideology of hate. He remembers a specific incident during which he was beating up a young Black man. His eyes locked with his victim, and he felt a surprising empathy with and for him. This was his turning point. Could it be that in that young man's eyes, he saw the eyes of Jesus? Piccolini withdrew from the Nazi movement and co-founded Life After Hate, a nonprofit that counsels members of hate groups and helps them disengage. Since then, he writes, over the last 14 years, I have helped over 100 people disengage from the same movement that I was a part of. Neo-Nazis know that I am a danger to them because I understand what they understand, but I also understand the truth. Understanding the truth, isn't that what Jesus came to teach us? I am the way and the life and the truth. Isn't that what incarnation is all about? The merging of the divine with the human, until we know with certainty that our mission and God's are the same: love. As the great poet Richard Crashaw wrote of the Christmas event, welcome all wonders in one sight, eternity shut in a span, summer in winter, day in night, heaven in earth, and God in humankind. Great little one, whose all-embracing birth lifts earth to heaven, stoops heaven to earth. A holy and happy continuing Christmas to you all. Amen.